The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, CHD. It is Wednesday, the 20th of May, 2026. We're live here at CHD TV. We have a great show for you today, an important show for you today. In a minute, Karl Jablonowski, our senior scientist, will be coming on to talk about Ebola. And then we're going to go to Edward Jones, and he's going to be talking about the murder of two beautiful girls following psychotropic drugs, which you really do. It's very important we listen to this one. And then we're going to go to Miriam for her EMR and wireless alert. So let's start off this morning with Ebola. Good morning, Karl Jablonowski.
Good morning, Polly.
Well, now we've had Hantavirus a couple of weeks ago, and it was just, they were trying to make everybody frightened. And I'm not putting down that the hantavirus is not a serious virus and all that kind of stuff. And now we've got Ebola. It seems an awful coincidence to me and a great many others that they're hankering down on these viruses and trying to, look, World Health Organization declares global emergency, rising Ebola cases in Congo and Uganda. So what's going on and how frightened should our people? Well, I know our people are not going to be in the slightest bit afraid. But anyway, what's the game here? What's happening?
Right. So presently, the outbreak centered around the Democratic Republic of Congo and Uganda has infected, we think, around 600 people and has killed, we think, around 100 people. The actual numbers are estimates because not everyone gets tested. So Ebola was first discovered in 1976 when there was an outbreak of hemorrhagic fever near the river Ebola of Zaire, which is now the Democratic Republic of Congo. And there have been several outbreaks since then, including, so there's the main Ebola strain that everyone is concerned about is Ebola, which is the Zaire version. There's a Sudanese version, and there's a Bundibugyo version, which is named after a province of Uganda. When these cases first started appearing, they tested for only the Zaire version of the Ebola virus. And they were testing negative because the actual virus that is spreading is the Bundibugyo virus. And so there was a delayed response because they were misidentifying that these were, they did not believe Ebola existed in these patients. Now, Ebola and all of its, I think there are a total of 6 variants, 2 of which we don't think even affect humans. One has only infected 1 human that we are aware of. They all exist as a reservoir in bats. So bats in the region can be infected and transmit Ebola, but the bats themselves are fairly asymptomatic, which means your contact with your wildlife is your threat of a new Ebola outbreak. This Ebola outbreak, I mean, if you pay attention to the news, it almost seems apocalyptic. And I think that is because ad revenue is driven when you present something to be apocalyptic. In the last 31 years, there have been 10 outbreaks of Ebola spanning a total of 16 of those years. This does not seem to be terribly out of the ordinary, and it is in fact predictable from our recent history that this outbreak would reassert itself. Efforts to contain it have been problematic. That region of the Democratic Republic of Congo, that country is kind of like in a perpetual civil war. There is a rebel militia called the M23, which occupies that part of the country. And so they are obviously concerned if government officials start coming in to treat public health emergencies but yeah, it's that in itself is a horrible setup. Now, Ebola transmits from person to person via blood body fluids. It does not transmit via insect bites, because in order to do that, you'd have to have the virus be able to survive in the saliva of mosquitoes per se, and that doesn't occur. It's a theoretical possibility that a fly that lands on an infected person might transmit that, but I don't think that's ever been observed. So as far as we know, it is human contact with bodily fluids, and in that region of the world, it is a spiritual practice during a funeral to actually touch the body of your loved ones and your family members and your friends, which is a terrific spiritual practice. However, public health, it's problematic and is seen as one of the drivers of the spread of the Ebola virus in this outbreak and previous outbreaks.
Karl, so the people that actually died of Ebola, did they die of Ebola because they didn't get proper treatment? And did anyone die in America, like on American soil here of Ebola? Or is it all in Congo?
So when I say the numbers are hard to count, I think less than a dozen people have actually died and confirmed that the presence of the virus. The United States has only ever seen 11 Ebola patients. 9 of them were brought here on an airplane. And so the remaining 2 were nurses who were attending to one of the patients before they knew that person was infected with Ebola. 2 of those 9 died. The medical standards of the United States are fairly well equipped to keep people alive. There are 2 monoclonal antibody treatments for Ebola, but it is a nasty virus. Just like Hantavirus is a nasty virus. Some of the most dangerous viruses that we know of attack the immune system first, and Ebola does that. It goes straight for the immune system, and not only does it dismantle it, but it turns the immune system on the body itself. It is the reason when it affects macrophages, they can signal to make the blood vessels permeable and cause blood to leak out of the blood vessels, which is where we get hemorrhagic fever. And when the immune system feels like it's losing that fight, it initiates a cytokine storm, which is a last-ditch effort to try to fight everything on every front, and that alone can drive mortality. Ebola also infects the liver, and where it is highly skilled at destroying liver. One of the treatments that was considered for use for Ebola patients was actually remdesivir, which you may remember was used widely to treat COVID patients, but it was deemed too dangerous for Ebola patients. And remdesivir has a pre-established side effects of shutting down and disrupting liver and kidney function. Why we ever used it for COVID treatment is beyond me. Maybe the price tag of several $1,000s per course may have had something to do with that, but no, there are several treatments in the United States that we could use against an Ebola infection, and it just doesn't spread here. You would need contact with bodily fluids. So, just to avoid contact with bodily fluids during an Ebola outbreak, and you should be okay.
It all sounds a bit dodgy to me. I mean, you've got Hantavirus first, and that's what, rats, and now you've got Ebola with bats. Like, it feels like man-made something weird is going on. Are you sure that it's not some kind of gain of function? I don't trust the World Health Organization. None of us do. So
Right.
Something is weird about all of this. Like one, then the next, and what's next? What are they trying to achieve here?
Right. if you took gain-of-function research at its best possible light, you're trying to understand the virus and maybe how to treat it and how it will evolve to something worse that you want to treat. There are some people who have been awfully busy during the last few weeks. Alexander Bukarev of the University of Texas Medical Branch, they administer the Galveston National Laboratory, which has a biosecurity level 4 labs where they do hantavirus research and Ebola research. And in fact, that professor, I think, is a co-inventor of the mRNA vaccine against the Andes strain of hantavirus. His lab has also looked into, what are the differences between the human immune systems and the bat immune systems when we're looking at Ebola and how it spreads. All of it on the face of it is good science if used correctly. But another person who would have been awfully active during this period of time is Vincent Munster, but he wasn't because he tried to smuggle monkeypox into this country from the Republic of Congo. But he and his lab in the Rocky Mountain Research Lab have looked into hantavirus and Ebola and clearly mpox.
Karl, thank you so much for your update on Ebola and everything. I think our people are just like, we're over it all. But the main summary of this is we don't need to worry. We're fine. Stay strong. Get in the sunlight. Eat organic food. Do not vaccinate. And onwards we go. The usual Ph.D. Karl Jablonowski, thank you so much for your science and for your work.
Thank you, Polly.
All right, everyone, we are going to go now to Bob Schwartz is going to come on, and Ed Jones. Good morning to you both.
Play.
Bob, I'm not sure we can hear you. You might be muted. I'm not sure. So, okay, let's. This is going to be a pretty horrific story for our viewers. So there's that warning there going out to you, but it's very important, Bob. So we're going to just have a chat with Bob. Then we're going to go and we're going to talk to Ed about this book that he's written and the research he's done on this story, because it's very, very important. Bob, we are highlighting at CHD TV, thanks to you, working closely with you on these utterly tragic stories of people that take psychotropic drugs and then have this ghastly situation that happens afterwards. And it's very important because how many people in America are on psychotropic drugs? Do you know what the latest stats are?
Yeah, I think Secretary Kennedy just said 17 to 25%, I think, of people are on psychotropic drugs. That's 1 out of every 4. So this is a very, very concerning situation in healthcare today.
And it involves children, people, from what we're hearing, children as young as 2 being put on psychotropic drugs. You may have more information on that. But Bob, I think let's go to Ed. Let's hear his story and let's get you back on to tell people how they can get help and summarize. Does that work for you?
Perfect. That sounds good.
All right, Ed. So this is a story about David Crespi, who murdered his 2 beautiful. It's very hard to comprehend this, but I want you to look at those girls.
Yes.
How old were they when this happened?
They were 5 years old.
I can't even imagine. So talk us through what kind of a man David was before he got on psychotropic drugs. What happened? Tell us about it.
I will, yes. So just to give you a little bit of background on him, he was kind of an indifferent student in high school. But then when he went off to college, Cal State Sacramento, he majored in accounting and graduated with a perfect 4.0 grade point average. And he subsequently took the CPA exam, and he scored in the top 5 in the country that year. He was quickly snapped up by a leading accounting firm in Sacramento. Then he signed on with Sacramento Savings Bank, where his career caught fire. And so by the time he was 29, David was the youngest chief financial officer in the history of California's oldest savings and loan. By this time, David and his first wife, Kimberly Hoffman, who was a trained nurse, had 2 adorable children. Tragically, a cancerous brain tumor took Kimberly's life, And to honor her memory, David created scholarships in her name to help future nurses better afford their education. So David subsequently married Kim Vandebrake, whom he had met in college. Kim was a fellow member of David's accounting club, and they had 3 children together, including the twins, Samantha and Tessera. And in 2001, David was recruited by Wachovia Bank in Charlotte, North Carolina, to serve as the vice president for internal auditing. So he and Kim and their now 5 children took off for what they thought was going to be a wonderful adventure in a new state. And of course, during all this time, David was in every way an exemplary husband, father, and citizen. And Kim later said that she felt like they had the perfect life. But then he was prescribed a toxic mixture of medications for insomnia and anxiety related to the pressures of his job. And those drugs were Ambien, Trazodone, and most important, Prozac, the latter of which he began taking 7 days prior to the tragedy.
And so can you continue with the story and tell us what happened?
Yes. So he was at home on leave for his depression, and he was at home with Kim and their 2 twins. And Kim went out to get a haircut, thinking she could safely leave the twins with her dad. And sorry if I get emotional, during a game of hide and seek, he stabbed the poor little girls to death. And then he picked up his cell phone, called 911, and it's an eerie 911 call. He says, "Hello, I just killed my 2 daughters," and you can hear the 911 operator say, "You did what?" "I just killed my 2 daughters." And then a female 911 operator cuts in, and the first thing she asks him was, "Sir, are you on any medications?" He says, "Yes." "What kind of medications?" He says, "Antidepressants." So that was in the 911 call, and that call was somehow suppressed. It was not released to the public nor to the press until about 2.5 months after David was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole.
So Ed, here's the thing that I think a lot of people new to this whole psychotrip, including myself, like I can't imagine anybody doing that. And how can drugs make you do that? It's very hard for us to understand. What goes through my mind is he must have been some secret evil person all along, because how can you ever stick a knife in a 5-year-old, let alone your own child? I don't understand.
That's right. That's right. I thought the same thing, and then I just went on a quest to, basically the book is kind of a detective story that asks that basic question, is it really possible that a legally prescribed drug like an SSRI antidepressant can turn a good man into a monster? And yeah, I found out a lot along the way. The first 2 sentences in my book are, "This is a true story about a terrible family tragedy, a tragedy made more terrible by how preventable it was." And what do I mean by preventable? Well, 16 hours before David killed his beautiful little daughters, he was playing a board game with the 5 children and with Kim Crespi, and they noticed he started to pace around the house erratically, pacing, going around furniture, coming back to the game, doing it all over again. Then later, Kim said he was jumping in and out of their bed, and then there was a square rug beside their bed, and he would strangely touch all 4 corners. Well, basically what was going on was David was exhibiting the classic signs of akathisia. And akathisia, for those who don't know that word, it's a Greek word meaning the inability to sit still. And so it basically means that your body, your brain is going into toxicity. It's been described as a form of chemical torture. So you just want to jump out of your skin. So anyway, he was exhibiting all those signs, but the poor family had no idea what was going on. And why did they not know what was going on? It was because the big pharma companies like Pfizer and GlaxoSmithKline and Eli Lilly had for decades buried negative clinical trial results around these drugs that suggested that akathisia occurs in a pretty substantial amount of patients. So the bottom line is, if the Crespi family had known about those warning signs, had known about akathisia, those two little girls could have been alive today.
And what about the mother? I mean, I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, but she's been standing up saying, this is not my husband. He would never do this. This is definitely the drugs that he was put on. Is that right? Is Kim saying that?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, she went on the Oprah Winfrey show for an hour-long episode, a few months after this. And Oprah interviewed both David and Kim. And yeah, she pled his case on Oprah Winfrey. And so, yeah, she to this day obviously maintains that it was the Prozac that turned him into the monster. And she gave me her contemporaneous journal entries around all of this. And so I interweave her contemporaneous journal entries into the book, so you can see her starting for it to start to dawn on her. And there's a moment where a book by Dr. Peter Breggin came out called Medication Madness. And she reads that, and this is about 2 or 3 years after the tragedy. And in that book, he starts to describe akathisia and how it has led to so many tragic cases. And Kim, who's a very religious, sweet woman, when she read that, she threw the book across the room, and basically said, that's what went on. That's when it dawned on her, that the akathisia caused by the Prozac was at the root of the tragedy.
And where's Big Pharma in all of this? Do you have a reporting system like we do with the vaccine injury and deaths that we have? Did they respond to the fact? Have anyone acknowledged that this could have been, or this was what caused him to behave and murder his children?
Not at the time. This happened like way back in, it was January. This is the 20th anniversary of the tragedy. It happened in January of 2006. And so, yeah, there was very little knowledge out there about things like Study 329, which you may know about. There was so Big Pharma had, and it was still, Big Pharma was still slow walking, putting suicidal side effects in black box warnings. So yeah, no entity associated with Big Pharma has ever acknowledged that an SSRI could have been the cause of this tragedy.
Edward, why did you write the book? What made you decide that you needed to do this?
Well, the main purpose of it is to hopefully prevent other families from suffering a tragedy similar to the Crespi family tragedy. It's to basically forewarn people about how dangerous these drugs can be, and as you well know, they're terribly dangerous for children in particular. So, the what I hope the readers will take away from the book are about 4 things. When patients and their families are armed with accurate information about medications, lives can be saved. B, better, more evidence-based options for treating depression are now available instead of neurotoxic pills. C, you as a patient have a legal right to informed consent. And D, never give up hope. You know, it's very encouraging that these stories are coming to light, and thanks to people like you.
Well, and thank you for writing that book. I mean, it's absolutely petrifying, the amount of people that just hand out psychotropic drugs like they're candy. Let's bring Bob back on. Bob, thank you for being here still. Sadly, this is not an isolated story, is it? We hear so much of this.
Oh my gosh, my soul aches just hearing that story, Polly. And thank you, Ed, for coming on today and telling that story. And my heart breaks for Dave, because that was the same situation that I experienced back in 2004 after taking only 5 days of medication of a drug called Concerta. My doctor gave it to me at a lethal dose, 3 times the starting recommendation. And I suffered an acute psychosis, very similar to the scenes from the documentary film or the award-winning Academy film, A Beautiful Mind. And that always resonated in my head. And that's why I was able to, 5 years ago, spiritually come together and do my own documentary film, 30-minute film, which won a Telly Award out of New York out of 15,000 entries, called If I Had Known the Risk. And it pretty much documents the experience that I went through. Less than 2 years later, I lost my family, I lost my career, I lost my home. But like Ed just said, I didn't lose hope. And I try to stay grounded into my roots, of my upbringing, some of the success that I had in the business world. And I was, by the grace of God, I'm here today to come on Ph.D. and thank you guys for housing that documentary film, and also creating this advocacy of bringing awareness, caution, and accountability to the psychotropic medication, especially with children. And we have to do a better job of keeping the statistics. Now, that akathisia is one of the side effects that's never really reported. And adverse events and medical errors is probably one of the side effects that are not reported correctly in the healthcare industry. In fact, statistically, less than 4% of hospitals, doctors, and patients report adverse events, and they're the third leading cause of death in America. And the only report that we have going back from 2014 is that it is costing the country $528 billion. So 12 years later, I'm thinking that this might be costing the country close to over $1 trillion in medical costs, as far as, trying to create better safety in regards to these medications, Polly.
Yeah, I mean, it's just utterly tragic. Those beautiful girls that they would have been, 20, 25, 26 or something, I don't know, today. They should be living their lives. Look at them. I mean, it literally breaks your heart. I can't, it's hard to look at that. And let's not forget, so David went to the doctor because he had insomnia, couldn't sleep at night, and some anxiety. So people, don't go to your doctor if you've got insomnia, anxiety. There are other ways of dealing with it. The last thing you need is Prozac and all these ghastly things that this poor man went on. And I'm not saying what he did was right. Nobody gets stressed about that. What he did was horrific.
Right.
But Polly, one of the main things to point out, and this is what I experienced a tremendous amount of, and I caught, of course, 20 years ago, I couldn't tell anybody about this because, cognitive impairment and PTSD were just whispered words back then. And, I didn't want, you just can't come on out and tell people what's kind of going on in your head. But we're experiencing thought disorder, faulty thinking, and cognitive impairment. And you look what's going on in society today with the overprescription of these medications, and we're having these teen takeovers going on in cities. We just witnessed what happened down in Austin, Texas, where 3 teens went on a shooting spree, and then we just had 2 teens that had a mass shooting at a mosque and in San Diego. And everyone's looking for the common denominator of what is behind all these all these tragedies. And I believe it's the adverse events of thought disorder, faulty thinking, and cognitive impairment.
Right. Well, Bob and Ed, thank you so much for coming on this morning. And Bob, Ed, we can get your book on Amazon. I'm definitely going to get that book. I feel like I owe it to the girls to read that.
Thank you.
But thank you for your work in this and highlighting it. And it's just tragic. Another big pharma. To me, so evil. Anyway, both of you, thank you so much for being on this morning. I can't thank you enough. And Bob, we have more stories. Thanks to Bob through CHD TV. We will be exposing more of this. If you have a story that you want to tell us, please do contact us at CHD TV. It's chd.tv. That's really important. chd.tv/contact. And we will have your story told. You don't have to be live. We can pre-record it if you prefer. But it's super important that we learn from each other. Ed, thank you so much. You're an amazing human being. Thank you for doing that. And Bob, as always, thank you.
Thank
My pleasure.
Polly. Thank you, CHD TV.
Amen. Thank you.
Okay.
Godspeed.
So this Friday, Mark Gorton from the Maha Institute is going to come on and talk more about the importance of this subject. Remember to tune in for that. In a minute, we're going to go to Miriam, but I just wanted to tell you all our documented duty to disobey. The deadline is now the final extension. There's nothing else that's going to go beyond this, May the 28th. So if you haven't got your tickets by May the 28th, your theatre, and it hasn't tipped, and many of your theatres have tipped. We're like in 160 plus theatres now for one night only on the 30th of June. So just one night where we're hopefully all going to get together. Lots of people from the military chapter and from Children's Health Defence. We're going to be all over the country there. So we're so looking forward to seeing you. But these states have not tipped. I'm very surprised at you, Florida. Florida has not tipped. Indiana has not tipped. Kentucky has not tipped. Michigan, Missouri, Montana, New Jersey, Virginia, Tennessee, and Pennsylvania. You guys have not tipped. So please do get your tickets. I can't believe California's tipped. California's tipped, Texas, and all the other states have tipped. But these states need help. So please, I know it seems weird buying a ticket in advance, but the theatres need to know that we're going to be at least 50% capacity in the theatres. So please do get your tickets today. We really appreciate it. It's such an important film. Thank you to all our viewers for all of your support throughout Duty to Disobey and these stories and your love and everything that you send us all the time. We really, truly appreciate you. But for now, we're going to go to Miriam. Miriam Eckensberg is going to be doing her EMR and wireless alert now.
Well, good morning, CHD, and welcome to another EMR and Wireless segment. My name is Miriam Eckenfels, and I'm the director of CHD's EMR and Wireless program. And before we jump into today's segment, during which I will be speaking with activists from Nevada County, California, that are trying to protect their beautiful homes from unwanted cell towers, I want to take a quick minute to remind everyone to please make their voices heard and take our new action alert. To support our work on the local level, we're currently running an action alert on the federal level to tell federal decision makers to stop the unchecked expansion of cell towers in our community. And through this alert, we're asking everyone to tell President Trump, Congress, and the FCC to stop wireless expansion until the FCC complies with the 2021 DC court order that, of course, mandated them to review their 35-year-old RF exposure standards. I also want to put a plug for our 704 No More page, where you can find additional resources and educational flyers on everything we'll discuss today, and I'll put that plug in at the end of the show as well. So now, with that being said, we're going to turn to today's guests. In a minute, we'll be speaking to Kristen Phalen, who is in the middle of a cell tower fight in Nevada County, and will give us an update on where things stand in her case. We're looking forward to that. But first, I'd like to welcome two amazing activists, Johanna Finney and Reinette Senum, who are community leaders in Nevada County and the leaders of Nevada County for Safe Tech. And we've been working with both of them for over a year now, actually, trying to pass a protective ordinance in Nevada County. So welcome, Reinette. Welcome, Johanna. Thank you for coming today.
Thanks, Miriam.
So I want to start with Johanna. I mean, you have been actually involved in the safe tech movement since 2017, right? When a cell tower was proposed on your street. And you have since then been trying to protect communities from unwanted cell towers. And the way we're doing that when we're not faced with a concrete cell tower proposal is through strong protective local ordinances. And that's what you have been trying to do in Nevada County. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how that went and where things stand?
Thanks so much, Miriam. In January of 25, the Board of Supervisors for Nevada County were holding a 3-day workshop. And in that workshop, on the agenda was an update to our 20-year-old cell tower ordinance. So it definitely needed to be updated. And what I requested at the time was that we hold a public meeting so that the community members can learn what the planning department had in mind and speak to that. And about 60 people showed up and really gave a lot of good ideas about what they'd like to see in the ordinance. Some of the comments we made and the work we've done in the year and a half since they voted on it were instituted into the ordinance. It definitely, though, wasn't as strong as we wanted. We hired the CHD legal advocacy team to help us write a 40-page plus ordinance template that the county could use. It was given to them on a silver platter and said, here you go. This is what you could use to protect yourselves as the government, protect the community, and also allow telecom to do their proliferation according to the law and the FCC rules. And so everybody was covered. The Planning Commission held a hearing, I believe it was at the end of February of 26, and they said, yeah, more work needs to be done on this, but let's pass what we've got right now. It wasn't great, but we, at least convinced the commissioners to tell the Board of Supervisors, you can approve this now, but send it back to us. Let us work on it some more. When it did get to the Board of Supervisors and when the planning staff director, Brian Foss, explained what the ordinance was and how they could vote on it, he really didn't describe the ways in which it could be better, and that the Planning Commission's direction was send it back to us. That wasn't really clear in the hearing. We voiced what we could. We, in fact, had Scott McCullough, our attorney with CHD, come on to the phone and talk to the Board of Supervisors. Prior to that, we had met with the planning director, the county counsel, Trevor Koski, and one of the planning associates, David Nicholas, and we explained all of this to them. How they still had local authority under federal guidelines, FCC rules, and state statutes. We told them you can still permit small cell antennas. You can still create a hierarchy of where you want the towers and small cells to go. It's not prohibitive. It's just letting telecom know, here's the hierarchy of preferred location. There were so many other things that they could have done, like radio frequency testing randomly at good cause yearly, but they decided not to do that. What they're doing is an RF testing at 60 days post modification or installation of a tower. They refused to permit small cell antennas, so it's going to be a free-for-all. They did not even put a design review on that. So these are some of the things that were disappointing in that ordinance vote. The Board of Supervisors voted to approve as is, as the planning director had presented it to them. What we did get was, instead of in the forested and rural setting, a 30-foot setback from a property line for a tower, it's now 150% the height of the tower. So we wanted it much further, but there is that. They did put in, like I said, the RF testing at the 60-day mark post-installation or modification. They expanded the notification to the residents to 1,000 feet around the proposed site. Those were the major wins, but there was a lot lost. Thanks.
Right, so there were some protections, but not as far as we wanted it to go, obviously. And I just want to remind our viewers that the reason why you need a strong local ordinance is because when a municipality is faced with a cell tower application, that is the process that is getting implemented on the local level, right? If you don't have a strong ordinance, then there are things that are governed by federal law. That have to happen on the local level, and then you're just getting steamrolled and the towers just go in. So Reinette, I want to talk to you about the politics of all of this, because that's really what this was, right? It was a political maneuver. So we've been working for over a year to come up with this really protective ordinance that was a win-win for the county, it was a win-win for the local municipality, and it was a win for the residents, because it was protective, but it was still low risk and meeting federal and state restrictions, and they denied it. So tell us, Reinette, what happened in that room, and what does that tell us about the government handling the telecom industry?
Well, it's pretty similar to what Johanna and I experienced when I was on city council in 2017. We were also putting together a telecom ordinance. And interestingly enough, within the city itself, the legal counsel, who claim they know nothing about telecom ordinances, law, and so on, really. However, it's clear that they've been given a playbook of what they can accept and what they won't accept, essentially to water down the telecom ordinance. And this never favors the citizens or the county or the city. So going in, both Johanna and I were very clear that this would be a similar playbook, because we also see it played out in cities and counties around the state and the country. So nonetheless, it was very clear to us that the telecoms are using an intermediary to essentially communicate with the county. And that is this kind of private-public partnership. And that's Sierra Business Council that gets a lot of the grants and jobs, essentially, that the county doesn't want to do. And what it does is it allows a lot of communications and decisions behind closed doors to be made without transparency, through obfuscation. Oh gosh, I can't even speak today. And so nonetheless, we saw this happening, and we knew ahead of time that the planning commission the planning staff were already being told what to do and what to put into the telecom ordinance. None of it favored the county. None of it favored the citizens themselves. And so we did a public records request. We could see there was some communications and decisions being made beforehand. And we kind of kept that close to our chest at that point in time, but we knew what was going on. And this is all going through this private-public partnership. And they were coming in, the Sierra Business Council organization, which is very typical, coming in, communicating with the staff behind closed doors, and they were actually representing the telecoms themselves, which would not be copacetic if that was really happening directly with the telecom and the county, so they were the buffer. And ultimately, the planning staff were saying, we're not experts here, we don't really know what we're doing, we're just doing our best. And yet, just like with our city, when we were trying to get that telecom ordinance passed, they were saying, but you're doing this, and we're not going to consider anything else, or we'll just give you a little bit of wiggle room. And this is just kind of the same playbook over and over again. And so that's exactly what happened. And sadly, it was very clear to us that the Planning Commission was giving orders through the Sierra Business Council via the telecom industry, and they were basically just, taking their orders and doing as they were instructed to do. And sadly, as Johanna had hit upon, there was very clear direction from one particular planning commissioner who said, hey, right now what we're going to do is we're going to pass this as is. We're going to have it go to the county supervisors. We want them to pass it as is, but then we want them to bring it back to the staff, the planning staff, work with Nevada County for Safe Tech. They have great ideas, implement that and massage it, and then once again, bring it back to the planning. And then once approved, we'll bring it back to the county supervisors. Did not happen. As Johanna said, they did not get the message. They ignored it. It was also very clear to me, Miriam, that every single county supervisor who was in that meeting discussing the telecom ordinance had not looked at a thing. They did not look at our 40-some pages. And by the way, this is worth tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of hours of work. And again, as Johanna said, we handed it to them on a silver platter. And this was going to protect them. Like the county doesn't have liability. The staff decided that they don't need liability insurance, right? They don't need protection. So that's not included. They're literally risking the county and setting them up for a lawsuit. It's the most bizarre thing. And the county supervisors ignored it, were oblivious to it, did not seem to know anything about it, and just rubber stamped it because the staff told them. So what this is, Miriam, is over and over and over again, we see the same playbook, which is the telecoms have set up a relationship, generally many times through a different non-profit, to do the communications. And then they write from behind the scenes the telecom ordinance, and they just have the planning commission and they have the county supervisors simply just rubber stamp it without question, without consideration. And I have to say, as a former elected official, I feel this is a complete violation of their oath.
Right.
And they are not protecting us from enemies, foreign and domestic. That telecoms are coming in here, and they are, as you said, they're not abiding by even the current FCC standards, and they're certainly not protecting us to the highest extent of the law.
Right, so I find that interesting because how do you counter that, right? A lot of people feel that, that the deck is stacked against them, that the industry always wins. The industry has money, they have power, they have the connections, and can set up nonprofits, advocate through them, like you say. So what do you want people to know? How do they fight against that? How do we win that fight?
Well, I think one of the big things is that you have to kind of get ahead of the curve. So you start doing public records requests right away, and you do that for the last 2-3 years, and you're probably going to see conversations that you did not know, had happened. There's that. And then if they do continue not to really try to protect the citizens, I would start seriously looking at doing recalls. Or, for instance, we have two people, which will be, I know that Kristen will talk about later. We have two of our county supervisors who are running for Congress. And what you need to do is blow your horn and say, hey, folks, if they're not going to protect us, if they're not going to look at what we put together and laid out on a silver platter with no cost to the taxpayer, no cost to the county, and it's the best model out there according to other successful telecom ordinances, if they're not willing to protect you at this level, the county level, what makes you think that they're going to protect you at the state and federal level? Right. And so I think we have to really take the politics to another level, and it's either blow the horn if they're running for a position that's higher than what they're currently in, and or start recall processes and really blow the horn about how they're not abiding by their oath.
Right. Right.
I'd also like to add that, and this is Johanna speaking, hi there, I would like to add that we need to do an education campaign for the communities, letting them know that the telecom agencies are going, and their intermediaries are going to be sending them marketing notices, knocking on their doors, giving them phone calls, asking them if they would like to be the leaseholder for a tower on their property. That is where the rubber meets the road. If we were to educate everybody in this community that they're going to come knocking and what it means, this would head a lot of things off at the pass, because everybody could then deny that location as an area for a tower. It causes so many problems in the neighborhood, and Kristen can speak to it. When you're, and this was what happened here, neighbors lose all relationship with each other, where it might have been a friendly relationship prior to. This kind of happens years ahead of time. You may not know that your neighbor is in negotiations with a telecom agency for years, 2 to 4 years, until you get the notice from the planning department saying there's going to be a hearing about a tower 400 feet from you. That's what happened to me. That's what's happened to Kristen. I mean, there's just so much of that going on. We have 7 towers in play right now in terms of applications that are new in the last year and a half. I was speaking with Reinette, who grew up in this area. She says she probably saw 7 in 10 years, but this year it's sped up, and they have really increased their marketing campaign to the property owners, and I would say that would be first line defense.
That's great advice, and thank you for bringing that in. That's fascinating that they are really ramping up the speed with which they are rolling out this infrastructure. So I think everybody should be aware. Let's bring in Kristen now, because Kristen's actually engaged in fighting a cell tower. And Kristen, welcome to you. Do you want to give us an update on where your case stands?
Oh, sure. Hi. Thank you for having me. We're currently in federal mediation, and we won on a county level, and then Verizon sued Nevada County in federal court. And the county contacted me and said that they weren't going to fight it, but that if I wanted to spearhead it and continue on with Verizon, that I could. And for the sake of these children and the families involved, I decided to do that. So we filed a motion to intervene, and the federal judge granted our motion. So now we're in mediation, and things were going well. I can't say too much because it's confidential, but essentially things were going well. We're working towards an amicable resolution, and we're planning on presenting the judge with a solution and a settlement by August. And unfortunately, recently, Verizon stepped out in bad faith and resubmitted the same application for the site we're litigating. Unfortunately, our county, instead of processing the application and immediately denying it, because it's the same exact application that our county board denied in 2024, they issued Verizon a tolling agreement for 365 days. And that's where we are. We're deciding if we need to appeal that or if they're going to pull that or what's going to happen in the next few days.
Okay, so walk us through that. So the tolling agreement would allow them to do what? And why do you think that the county, so why do you think Verizon did that? Presumably when they were in negotiations to find an alternative location that would have worked for everyone. Why do you think they decided to refile the application? And what has changed on the county level that they feel they might have more success now?
So I don't know for sure, but my best guess, given what I've heard and what I'm seeing, is that they believe the only reason we won on a county level was because my previous district supervisor, Ed Schofield, was very supportive of the people in his district and heard our plea and supported us in upholding our appeal and denying their permit. And from what I understand and what I'm gathering, it seems to me that Verizon thinks that if they can get our current supervisor to vote for them, that they would win on a second go round with this. If they pulled the lawsuit from the county or if they lost in federal court, their new application is now just sitting in the wings under the old ordinance. And it seems to me that they feel confident that my current supervisor, who's currently running for Congress, Rob Tucker, District 2, would be on Team Telecom, and that he would vote to uphold their application and that the other supervisors would follow suit. I think that's their current game plan.
So politics. So I guess that, your counter to that offense if would be to just, as Reinette said before, right, fight on the political level, educate people that they would not represent their interest. How has it been for you to be sort of like an advocate in this space? Because I know this case gained a lot of attention, both I'm sure in your neighborhood, but also nationally. Have other communities reached out? And how has it been to be an advocate in such a popular fashion?
I would say exhilarating would be a good word, because it's been terrifying and exciting all at the same time, but hard and amazing at the same time. It's been incredibly difficult to realize that, at the beginning of this, I thought it was the people in the county versus Verizon and Telecom. But echoing what Reinette was saying, it becomes very apparent this is actually Telecom and the county versus the people. And that's been a very hard pill to swallow, but I'm grateful for the amazing people I've met along the way, such as yourself and Reinette and Johanna, and people who get it, and we're working together to protect our communities and our homes and our families. And I think that one of the most painful things recently is to feel completely unsupported by my current district supervisor, especially when he's running for Congress and on his congressional website is quoted saying that he's a strong voice for public safety and defending local quality of life. The reason the board denied this application the first time is because it's an unsafe and irresponsible location, and Verizon failed to provide hard evidence that they even need a tower there. Their maps show they have coverage here, and they couldn't prove that they truly need, that there's a gap in coverage. On top of that, there's a lack of a sufficient fall zone, and there's 12 people who live at the base of this tower, 100 feet from this tower, 4 of whom are children. So if there's a structural issue with that tower, it could collapse and kill someone and harm those children. So if he's for public safety, it would be great if he would support the local families who are now in a high-level federal mediation with a telecom giant instead of apparently seeming to side with them. That's how it's feeling. Over the past year, he's told me that he would come out for a site tour and meet with us, but he's met with Verizon multiple times and hasn't once met with his constituents. And what's also frustrating is that on his same site, he says, I hope to be known as a servant leader who leads by example with integrity and humility. If he has integrity, I would appreciate if you keep his word and come meet with the people who are going through this and show that he cares about our family and our children and our safety. Because right now, I feel completely unrepresented and I don't feel seen or heard or like he even cares about us.
Right. And unfortunately, that's so often the case when we talk about politics, particularly when it gets to the federal level. And I want to follow up on something that you said, with the coverage gap analysis, which is something that we see very often in cases when, a cell tower is proposed and you actually ask for the evidence, like, hey, show us that you have a gap in coverage, which they're required to provide under federal law. That evidence is very thin, and many local ordinances require that as well. And it's either non-existent because the carrier already has coverage, or it's deeply flawed. And that is part of why, on the federal level, there has been this massive push to remove that requirement altogether, right? So we have seen HR 2289 move through the House. Luckily, it is stalled now, but that would have removed the requirement for the carrier to show any gap in coverage altogether, and new rules proposed by the FCC would do a similar thing. Reinette, you have been involved in fighting this stuff on the federal level, and we've been collaborating on that for a long time. Do you want to give us a bit of a sense of what could happen on the federal level, where you see things going, and why it's so important that people pay attention?
Well, it's huge. I mean, I've been in this fight for a long time and on city council for 8 years, and I've never really seen such a move on the level of the FCC, the president through executive orders, and also our legislators. It's kind of like this trifecta. They're coming at us from all different directions, really mirroring each other, which is a complete destruction of local government as we know it. They're like, you know what? You guys are pesky. You're in our way. You've learned how to fight. You're getting more intelligent. You know our weaknesses, which is gap in service. We have on Nevada City Council, when I was on as the city council member, we sent Verizon packing because they could not prove gap in service. They're like, let's get rid of that. So I have never seen such an aggressive act against local government and determination as I have this last year. And it started last November when the FCC said we have some proposed rule changes which will destroy local government as we know it. And not just through the telecoms be able to come in here and do whatever they please, but also because it would set up this huge doorway for all industries to come in and ignore planning, ignoring doing environmental impact reports and setbacks and looking at cultural, historic sites and even listening to the people. There'd be no consideration. I've never seen anything like this. And it is because the people don't want this, and they've learned how to stand up for themselves. And because of that, the FCC and our legislators and our president have to do their bidding and clear the pathway for them, because we've been winning a lot and we've learned how to fight and push back.
Right. We absolutely have that playbook sort of like packed down, and the stop5g.org initiative has great step-by-step instructions on how cell towers can be fought on the local level. And also, we post updated information on Facebook at Stop5G Near Me, or on social media on all major platforms at Stop5G Near Me. And Johanna, you have also been in this space of political advocacy for a while. Do you have anything to add to what Reinette just said? And also maybe what do you want people to take away, from what has happened in Nevada County?
Yeah, Kristen mentioned that Rob Tucker, a Republican, is running for Congress, but so is a Democrat named Heidi Hall. She's one of our supervisors. So I don't want to leave that out of the mix. This is a highly political situation, and Supervisor Hall has proven herself to be not a friend of the people on this issue. So both of them are trying to be elevated in this congressional space when they haven't proven that they can protect their own community. So I wanted to state that. Also, in terms of the significant gap that you mentioned, just yesterday, the zoning administrator, who is also our planning director, Brian Foss, just approved another conditional use permit for a 150-foot tower in the forested area near the Yuba River on Purdon Road. This was proven, they did not prove, Verizon and Vertical Bridge did not prove significant gap. And that's what we asked them to do, and he approved it anyway. So I just want to state that happened yesterday. But what people can do. I think the number one thing is stay united. Through Nevada County for Safe Tech, we have grown awareness and activism. More people are showing up to the hearings, writing letters, calling in. And I think just feeling united with one another. We've got people on the ridge here, in town, all over the place who are coming together and realizing that it's only them together raising their voices. And like Reinette and Kristen said, voting these people out, it's probably the only way we can do it, and then just keeping fighting at the federal level as we have been. So thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. I mean, thank you to all three of you, not just for coming on today, but for the terrific fight that you have been putting on at the local level. It is because of activists like you that change happens on the local level and ultimately happens on the federal level. So thank you for all you do. And to our viewers, I want to just put a quick plug again to our action alert. To tell the federal government that we do not want any additional wireless infrastructure pushed into neighborhoods close to homes, close to schools, until the FCC has complied with the court order. And also to go to 704 No More. Look at the resources, share with your neighbors. We're running monthly campaigns. We're currently in a campaign to raise awareness around EMR syndrome awareness and around all of the health impacts that RF radiation has on humans. And there are terrific resources under the educational resources tab on the 704 No More website. You can also follow us on social. You can subscribe to our newsletter at 704 No More, and Stop 5G Near Me is also on all major channels. And with that, I thank my guests for coming today, and it was great to see you all, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
My name is Sharon Schwanz.
And this is about your sister.
It is. My sister, Donna Stillman.
And how old was she?
She was 58 when she passed.
So she decided to take the Pfizer shot. Did you take the COVID shot?
I did not.
What was her feeling on this whole thing?
She was very, I guess I would call my sister kind of a hypochondriac. I came from a medical family. Educated, college educated. My father is a infectious disease doctor. Always big pharma. That's kind of how I was raised. So I vaccinated my children. Certainly not an anti-vaxxer by any means. But when my sister, the COVID, started happening, she was absolutely going to be one of the first people in line to get the vaccine.
All right. So she had 3 in all.
3 in all that I know of. Yeah. She got the first 2, and then she had surgery. So she wanted to take the booster before she had surgery.
So when did she start to feel ill, and how did we get to a diagnosis of ALS, and why do you think that's because of the Pfizer shot?
Yeah, well, so she took the first one in 2021. She was a really, really healthy, active, thin, fit woman. She took her dog for 5-mile walks. She was always, working out, doing some kind of exercise, some kind of activity. And she got the first one, and she told me that she started getting weakness in her legs. And she told me that maybe I'm working out too hard, maybe I'm doing too much, that kind of thing. And I just thought, a little concerned, obviously. Time went on. I think you have to wait. I don't know how many weeks it is until you get the second one. But I think it was 6 weeks or 8 weeks. But she did get the second one, and her symptoms started getting progressively worse. She told me that she started getting, her back was hurting. She started having drop foot. Really her foot was starting to go numb where she couldn't move it. She would have twitching all throughout her spine and back, weakness in her hands, numbness, just a whole gamut of symptoms that just did not make any sense for somebody that had been previously, 3 months prior, a very, very healthy person.
Did you discuss at this point did you say to her, look, it's the shot?
I did.
What did you say?
I did. She just brushed it off. She did. And I just said, well, you really want to, maybe do something, try to detox your body or do something to, she was very, no, it's got to be something else. It's got to be something else. So she kept having all these tests done, the EMG tests where, they put needles in your hands and in your feet, very painful, trying to come to some kind of diagnosis. Nothing was coming up. She had physical therapy, to try to get some of her movement back in her feet and her lower back. She was in pain all the time. She was starting to have problems moving her hands. She wasn't able to, at that point she started using a walker. When I saw her last in March of, I saw her in March of 22, was after she had surgery. I should back up. In January of 22, she ended up having surgery to try to repair some of she had bone on bone in her lower back to see if they could repair the nerve damage. And ultimately it didn't really help very much. It helped for a little while. She ultimately got the diagnosis in April of 22 of ALS. And the whole time, things just kept getting worse. It was like it was on, fast speed. I mean, she couldn't drive anymore. She couldn't go to the bathroom by herself. She couldn't cook meals. She couldn't go up and down the stairs anymore.
Does she understand now that it's the Pfizer?
At that point, I think she started putting two and two together a little bit. Her son kept saying, "Mom, I think this is from the vaccine. It's got to be from the vaccine." And I think I just don't know at that point if she was in denial. She just didn't want to know, it had been too late. But I think that diagnosis for her was kind of it. I think that was when she just kind of gave up. I kept saying to her, I said, well, Donna, why don't we do some kind of out of the box things? Because the neurologist that diagnosed her said, well, she lived in Tucson, said, well, you can go to Phoenix and do some trials, some medicine trials, and she said, yeah, I don't think I want to do that. So why don't you do some other things? I mean, there are some successful stories, hyperbaric oxygen and some different, modalities, stem cells, that kind of thing. I told her, I'll come get you, I'll take you to, to these appointments. And some of the stem cells were in Mexico. And she said, well, Sharon, I'm too sick to travel. So, I think that finally she just threw in the towel. After you get that diagnosis, which is probably the worst diagnosis you could probably get, I would imagine. I mean, that would be up there, other than maybe brain tumor or something. She gave up. She just gave up. And then they brought in a hospital bed into her house. She had people coming in and out, people she didn't know, to try to take care of her and cook meals for her. And, I remember when I last saw her in May of 22, she was putting her hair up in a scrunchie kind of thing. And she just pulled something just by doing that. and she couldn't sleep. The twitching all over her body was absolutely terrible. There was nothing that was helping it. She just became a shell of herself after these vaccines, and I'm pretty sure it affected her brain also. I mean, just the depression and the anxiety, not being able to do anything, go anywhere. You know, everybody, her husband and son had to basically be her caregivers. Yeah, her at the time 17-year-old son had to watch Donna go from. I'll
show the people how
yeah.
beautiful sister. How old?
Thank you. She was 58 when she passed. Yeah. So it was really, and this was us before a wedding up in Napa. You know, wine tasting. She loved to travel. We went to Hawaii right before this wedding, actually, to the Big Island, and you know, before she died, she said she just wanted to be with the turtles, and because we all snorkeled with the turtles.
Were you with her when she died?
I was not. And she just really, you know, she really stopped answering text messages and phone calls, and she just really didn't. I do believe she just kind of gave up, but that was one thing she did tell me was that she wanted to be among the turtles, and so I think our goal now is to take her ashes and to disperse them, you know, among the turtles in Hawaii, and that would be her wish, and I hope to honor that. But she didn't deserve this. She, like everybody else who has signed your bus here and this amazing cause, thought these shots, if you want to call them that, were safe and effective, and they weren't. And just to watch a young, healthy, active woman who, you know, had many years left to live, I thought I'd have my sister for the rest of my life, and I don't have a sister anymore, you know, and my parents are getting getting older. They're in their 80s, and I thought she would be with me forever. Sorry, I told myself I'd keep it together, but you know, she left her daughter Taylor, who's 23, and her son Evan, who's 20 now, who basically had to watch, you know, his mother die. So, and be her caregiver and take her to the doctor and cook meals for her and her husband, Kurt, as well. So terrible. Yeah. And my father, who's, as I told you, he's retired now, but an infectious disease doctor, you know, he's 88 years old, you know, had to go over there and you know, see his daughter in that situation. You're not supposed to watch your you know, children pass away.
Does your father understand what happened to his daughter?
I don't believe so.
No, it's too painful.
I think he is, since he's a physician, has always been for, you know, all the medications and vaccines and that kind of thing.
So why did you become the one that woke up, if you like?
That's a good question. I think part of it, because I have my own journey. I've had Lyme disease and got better from it, but was basically told that there was nothing wrong with me for a lot of years. And I finally figured out what truly was wrong with me, and I wasn't going to quit until I got myself better. You know, I still have the ups and downs, but for the most part, my health is good. And I fought for it. And I wanted to do the same for my sister, but she wouldn't let me.
Well, we'll always remember. We'll put a picture on the bus.
Thank you.
You're going to write on the bus as well.
I did.
You've already done that. Okay.
1007.
Oh, we're over 1,000 now. Okay.
Yeah, we're in the thousands now.
That's
so
sad. Okay, well, thank you for telling your sister's tragic story. And,
thank you.
And warning, about your warning everyone of the danger of the Pfizer shots.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, and thank you for doing this. It's amazing.
The incredible service members.
And we owe you our freedom.
The Pentagon is
going to require vaccines for all service members.
I'm asking the Defense Department to look into how and when they will add COVID-19 to the list of vaccinations our armed forces must get.
Leaders did everything legal or illegal within their power to coerce and influence their service members to get the shot.
Her son and 9 other Marines were being held in confinement in the brig until they got vaccinated.
If you don't do what they tell you to do, they will ostracize you. They will destroy your life.
8,000 well-trained men and women were fired.
I lost my ability to feed my family.
I mean, I'm being told you're getting dishonorably discharged.
You cannot mandate an experimental medical product on military members.
The impact is really on the entire nation.
I had a battalion commander come to me and she said, "Dear God, we're killing our own soldiers."
When we talk about orders that are unlawful, now there is a duty to disobey.
.46% of the American people say mandates are dangerous, they're damaging, and vaccine science isn't settled.
The steady decline of childhood vaccine rates. Vaccination rates continued to decline last year.
There's a discourse about vaccines that didn't exist before.
Children's Health Defense.
Children's Health Defense.
Children's Health Defense.
Children's Health Defense.
Children's Health Defense is the leader in the health freedom movement.
The Department of Health and Human Services is overhauling the immunization schedule, now only recommending 11.
We are making recommendations that are science-based, that are common sense.
Secretary Hegseth, discarding the mandatory flu vaccine requirement.
Your body, your faith, and your convictions are not negotiable.
People recognize you have to be able to make an individualized decision.
For the first time, the U.S. FDA will acknowledge that COVID-19 vaccines killed American children.
States are putting in place medical freedom laws. There's bills in Congress that Children's Health Defense is supporting, the GRACE Act for the right to religious exemptions, the End the Vaccine Carve-Out, ending liability protection, and Tom Massey's bill to repeal the PrEP Act.
One of the most aggressive medical accountability lawsuits in decades.
Suing the American Academy of Pediatrics.
CHD is suing under RICO laws, claiming that the AAP operates as a criminal enterprise and has for decades.
A federal judge yesterday blocked Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s recent overhaul of the nation's childhood vaccine schedule.
They basically just froze all vaccine policy.
The American Academy of Pediatrics and other medical groups filed a lawsuit arguing the vaccine changes violated federal law.
Which is outrageous for a single judge sitting in Boston to stop any work at the Centers for Disease Control related to vaccines.
This conflict between medical freedom and medical coercion, it's a fundamental conflict that we must resolve now in favor of medical freedom or forever be truly slaves to medical tyranny.
I am so glad that there are people like you who are still fighting this.
Children's Health Defense. If you don't know what they do, folks, look it up.
We have got to, as a society, global, decide, is medical coercion okay, or do you have a right to decide what happens to your body?
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.